Back in 2003, the company I'd been working for shut down. And just like that, I was out of a job. Fortunately, I had a solid reputation as a skilled machinist and didn't have to pound the pavement too long. Within a day, I landed a position at a company that, for this story, we'll call Spiral. They specialized in custom, high-precision tools, and the place seemed decent enough at first. Spiral was owned and run by one guy, who I'll call Dick. Fitting name, and you'll see why. He was in the building every single day, pacing around like he owned the air that we breathed. At the time I joined, he had a floor supervisor who was actually pretty great. Fair, experienced, and respected by the crew. The kind of guy you could go to with any issue and expect a real solution. Well, about a year in, that supervisor and Dick had a massive falling out. No one exactly knows what happened, but it was messy. The next day, Dick called me into his office and told me that I was now in charge. Just like that. No warning, additionally, no raise. Just, you're the guy now. And I should have known then that this wasn't going to be good. Let me paint a picture of Dick for you. He started Spiral out of his garage in the 70s and managed to grow it into a multi-million-dollar company. By his early 30s, he had developed a massive industrial park where Spiral was now headquartered, and had stacked up enough money to be one of the wealthiest people in the state. But wealth doesn't necessarily bring class. Dick was the most condescending, arrogant prick I've ever met. He screamed at his employees for talking to each other, treated them like they were replaceable garbage, and had this pathological need to let you know just how rich he was, especially while paying us barely above minimum wage. For some reason, he treated me and one other guy just a little bit better than the rest. But that didn't mean good by any stretch of the imagination. I think he just saw us as more useful, so the abuse came with a different flavor. Still, we weren't allowed to talk to each other during the day. If he caught us chatting even for a second, he'd fly into a rage. Once I was unofficially in charge, I got a front row seat to just how shady this guy really was. During one of his rants where he thought he was being impressive, Dick let it slip that he cooks his books. Spiral paid exorbitant rent to the industrial park, which, conveniently, was owned by another one of Dick's shell companies. On paper, Spiral barely broke even, but in reality, the guy was raking in cash and hiding it behind a mountain of fake expenses. He even bragged once that he had buried barrels of industrial waste on his personal property, just to avoid disposal fees. Simply dug a hole in his backyard and dumped it in one night. That job turned into a decade-long slow bleed. My responsibilities piled up endlessly. Hiring, training, scheduling, production oversight, maintenance coordination. But the thing that didn't pile up was my pay. Every time I asked for a raise, he'd pull the "we're struggling financially" card while reminding me how lucky I was to have a job. It wasn't just insulting. It was actually imprisoning. My paycheck kept me barely afloat, which meant I couldn't afford to leave, and I think Dick knew that. Our turnover rate here was absurd. I'm talking around 95%. People would quit after a week or two, and it got so bad that even temp agencies stopped sending us anyone. That's when you know you've hit rock bottom, when temps would rather stay unemployed than work for your shop. Eventually, I smartened up. I began carefully wording my title in internal emails and documents. I started calling myself the plant manager. At first, Dick rolled his eyes, but when I framed it as something that might help us attract better candidates, he begrudgingly agreed. That was my golden ticket. I didn't have a college degree, but now I had the title and a decade of real-world experience to back it up. I began job hunting in earnest, and after 6 long months, I found a company willing to bring me on. Higher pay, actual benefits. Yeah, Spiral offered none, along with a healthy work culture. There was just one problem. They implored me to give a full 2-week notice. That was a no-go for me. I'd seen what happened to every person who gave notice at Spiral. They were booted out immediately. Dick himself had no interest in professionalism, just his ego. So instead, I quietly packed up my personal stuff, made sure I had all the documentation I needed, and waited until the end of what I deemed my last shift. Before I left that night, I sat at my desk and sent 3 individual emails. One to the head of OSHA, another to my contact at the state's EPA, and a third to the state attorney's office. I didn't have to make anything up. I just laid out what I'd been told and what I'd personally witnessed. The book cooking, the waste dumping, the unsafe working conditions, along with the willful neglect. The paper trail I had was more than enough. That night, I left my keys on my desk, and on top of them was a note with 2 simple words: I quit. I knew the fire that I was lighting as I walked out the door, and I was a little bummed that I wouldn't be around to watch it burn. But about a month later, I got a call from my OSHA contact. They'd already hit Spiral with $150,000 in fines for numerous willful violations. And the EPA? They excavated half of Dick's backyard before he finally confessed to where he'd buried the waste. I never exactly heard what happened with the Attorney General, but I do know this: Dick ended up behind bars. Poetic justice, in a sense. It took 10 years of being underpaid, disrespected, and financially handcuffed, but in the end, I walked out with my head held high and watched a crooked millionaire finally get what was coming to him. Best resignation ever. In high school, I was head over heels for my wife's best friend, Emily. The funny thing is, she couldn't stand me when we first met. She told people I was creepy, ugly, awkward, you name it. Now, she never said it to my face, but I heard enough from classmates to know exactly where I stood with her. Still, I thought she was beautiful. Not just physically, although there was that, but she had this energy, confident, loud, kind of magnetic, in the way that people with that much self-esteem tend to be when you're a teenager. She was everything I wanted, and she couldn't have been any less interested. Then our school assigned summer projects, and by some wild stroke of luck, I got paired with Emily. At first, we only talked about the assignment, but over time, our conversation started drifting. We'd message each other on AIM for hours, about school, our families, dreams, the usual teenage stuff. It wasn't flirty at first. It was a genuine friendship, but in my head, it felt like a second chance. I'd been this weird outcast in her world, and now I was getting to rewrite that story. The catch was that part of our relationship was built on a lie. I told Emily that I had a girlfriend. See, there was this girl I knew, just a friend, and we hung out a few times that summer. I'd post photos of us on MySpace and Facebook and let Emily assume that we were dating. It wasn't just to make her jealous, though, yeah, that was part of it. It was also to make her feel safe around me, to convince her I wasn't pursuing her anymore, and it worked. She relaxed around me, and I got to build this fantasy where she started seeing me as someone different, someone desirable. I'd make up stories about romantic dates with my girlfriend. I'd describe dinners under fairy lights, walks through botanical gardens, late-night drives to nowhere just to talk, and Emily ate it all up. She'd sigh and say that was exactly what she wanted. She complained all the time about guys just wanting to hook up with her, never putting in any real effort. I used that. Every one of my fake stories was tailored to hit that emotional soft spot she had. She'd stay up listening to me talk about this imaginary romance and practically narrate her own unmet desires. I was taking notes the entire time. When the school year started again, I broke up with my fake girlfriend, quietly of course, and Emily and I kept talking. I tried asking her out, but she turned me down. I knew she liked me, I think, in some strange, halfway kind of way, but not enough. A few mutual friends told me that she said I was still weird, still off. I remember back, I had these nervous habits back then, and I think that that's at least part of what unsettled her. So I changed. I started lifting weights. I learned how to dress better. I watched how other people moved, talked, stood. I worked more on my stillness, on eye contact, and on ditching those fidgety quirks. It was actually exhausting, but it felt like I was shaping myself into someone she'd want. Every time I saw her, I wondered if I was getting closer. When, out of nowhere, Emily told me that her best friend Sierra liked me. Now, Sierra was the opposite of Emily in nearly every way. Quiet, grounded, introverted. We had barely spoken 10 words to each other before this. We shared a few classes together, but that was it. Still, Sierra was beautiful, curvy in all the ways teenage boys fixate on, combined with this gentle, soft-spoken warmth. I wasn't in love with her, but I figured, why not? If I couldn't be with Emily, maybe this could help nudge me closer to her. So I leaned into it. I started taking Sierra on the most romantic dates I could dream up. Not because I wanted to impress her, but because I wanted Emily to hear about them. From the both of us. I took Sierra to all the places I knew Emily would swoon over. Outdoor movies, lakeside picnics, hole-in-the-wall cafes. I held back physically, barely even kissed her at first. I played it slow, thoughtful, the kind of guy Emily had always said she wanted but never got. After each date, I'd casually mention it to Emily. Nothing braggy, just, oh, we tried this new place, or I made her this playlist. Then Sierra would fill in the rest. I know Emily was listening, and I know it got to her. Meanwhile, her own boyfriend at the time was a disaster. Cheap, demanding, emotionally immature. She'd complain that he took her to Applebee's with a Groupon before trying to pressure her to get down in the parking lot. She'd tell me she wished guys were more like me. She had no idea I was curating my behavior with Sierra just for that effect. But something happened that I didn't plan for. I actually started falling for Sierra. What began as a calculated strategy slowly turned real. We didn't share a ton of interests, but she made me feel steady, safe even. She supported me in ways I didn't expect from someone that I barely knew. She was patient, kind, and genuinely excited about building a future. Even early on, we talked about marriage, kids, a house someday, and I realized I didn't want to let that go. So I made a choice. I let go of Emily, emotionally. Stopped fantasizing about a moment that was never going to happen, and I went all in on Sierra. She was the real thing. I just hadn't seen it at first. Right around then, Emily and her boyfriend had a massive breakup. I mean, explosive. And like clockwork, she called me, crying, emotional, needing someone to talk to. But this took place when I was literally on the phone with Sierra. I had to tell Emily that I'd call her later. And that single moment changed everything. Emily flipped up. She called Sierra and blew up on her, saying things like, I had him first, and he only wants you because I put you two together. She was furious, jealous. Sierra was blindsided. She had no idea Emily harbored any of those feelings. They'd been best friends for years, and just like that, it was now over. Sierra cut her off completely. No more sleepovers, no more texts, no more friendship. Their whole history gone in a phone call. Sierra never forgave her, and still hasn't years later. I don't think she ever will. It's been over 15 years since all of that. Sierra and I got married 5 years ago. We bought a house. We're trying to start a family. I never told her the full story about how we started. About the real reason I dated her at first. About how much manipulation went into those early days, and I don't think I ever will. But I love her, deeply, and not in a I grew to love her way. I genuinely believe we were meant to end up together. I just took a really messed up path to get here. I sometimes think about Emily, what she's doing now, if she ever thinks about me, if she ever regretted waiting too long. Just not in a longing sort of way. More like remembering a version of yourself you no longer recognize. I didn't start this story to make myself sound good. I actually don't think I come off that way at all. But sometimes the truth is complicated. Sometimes the person who wins didn't even know they were playing a game. Alright, so here's a truth that nobody wants to say out loud, but I'm going to anyway. There was this kid in my town, a year below me, senior year, basically the golden boy. The kind of kid you'd swear was plucked straight from one of those high school dramas where the quarterback has it all: money, girls, charm, and absolutely zero humility. Football star, ran track, played baseball and basketball too. Straight A student. And if the rumors were true, I'm pretty sure half of his assignments were done by other kids that he intimidated or bribed. He was never seen without a cheerleader on his arm or some cocky smirk on his face. Everyone seemed to adore him. Teachers, coaches, parents, even the damn school board. But this dude was a complete asshole. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill jerk. I mean, he went out of his way to make people beneath him, anyone not popular, not rich, not good-looking enough, feel like total garbage. This wasn't just an attitude. It was a mission. I saw him dump fast food wrappers onto kids in the marching band just to humiliate them. Once I saw him throw a tuba case across the grass for no reason other than to get a laugh from his jock buddies. He didn't care because he knew he could get away with it. He always did. Me, I got left alone mostly because I had a few mutual friends in his social circle. I guess that bought me a layer of protection, but it didn't extend to people I actually cared about. He'd bully kids I hung out with, and then flash me a smile like I was supposed to be grateful that he didn't mess with me too. Like I owed him for his selective cruelty. So anyway, last weekend there was this massive house party. End of year kind of deal. Everyone showed up. Me included, although mostly out of boredom. I didn't care to drink or hook up like everyone else. I just didn't have anything better to do. And of course, Golden Boy was there, doing his usual rounds, getting shit-faced like it was a sport. And I mean absolutely obliterated. Falling into furniture, puking in the bushes, slurring his words, just a complete wreck. At around 3 a.m., he and a few of his equally drunk friends pile into a truck. They peel out of the driveway, drunk off their asses. No seatbelts, 85 and a 40, twisting road, pitch black outside. And I think you already know how this ends. The driver of the car loses control. He hits a pole, and our beloved hometown hero flies through the windshield and smacks into a tree, dead on impact. And you know what I felt when I heard? Relief. Not shock, not sadness, not even indifference. Relief. Because I knew exactly what the world had just been spared. And the part that kills me, absolutely kills me, is watching everyone now act like we lost some kind of saint. Because the kid who died, he was a monster. And now the whole town is pretending he was a martyr. I woke up that morning to people sobbing, screaming, news reports, coaches blubbering through interviews about what an inspiration he was. They brought in grief counselors to school. We got out of class early so we could reflect. The school even raised money for his family, his filthy rich family, like they were victims of some act of God, instead of their kid being an arrogant idiot who got himself killed. I heard someone call it an unavoidable tragedy. Really? Unavoidable? That kid climbed into a moving death trap by choice. He was drunk, reckless, and every single thing about that night was preventable. But no one's allowed to say that. Everyone's too busy crying about how he did everything right and was full of love, touched everyone's lives. It makes me want to scream. What about the band kid who died last year? The quiet kid who played clarinet and was actually kind. He got a 10-minute speech during morning announcements and some awkward silence at lunch. No counselors, no fundraisers, no bullshit eulogies about how wonderful he was. Because that kid wasn't popular. He wasn't rich. Because he didn't have the town eating out of the palm of his hand. This double standard is disgusting, and nobody's being honest about it. So I'll be the one to say it. I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad he won't be around to make life miserable for anyone else. I'm glad no more band kids will get trash dumped on them. I'm glad no more quiet freshmen will be harassed in the hallways just because they're different. The truth is, he wasn't taken too soon. He was taken before he could do more damage. I know how that sounds. I know I'm not supposed to say that about someone who died. But if we can't be honest after someone's gone, then what's the point of remembering them at all? The fake tears. The rose-colored lies. He was a bully who died doing something stupid, and I won't pretend otherwise. Let everyone else rewrite his story. I'll remember the truth. A little over a year ago, I found out my husband was cheating on me. It started like most gut feelings do. It was quiet, almost dismissible. There wasn't some huge red flag or dramatic change in his behavior. He didn't suddenly come home smelling like perfume or texting from the other end of the couch with a weird grin on his face. No, it was small things. Like how he used to double text me while he was out of town, just to say he missed me. Then suddenly, radio silence. How he used to come home from trips with a souvenir or a funny story. And now all I got were vague shrugs and tired eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. I think I knew long before I ever started snooping. But when someone promises to love you forever, you want to believe them. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt, until that doubt becomes deafening. One night, while he was asleep beside me, snoring away like nothing was wrong in our lives, I got up, went to the kitchen, and made tea that I didn't even drink. I sat there for 20 minutes trying to decide if I could live with the possibility that he was hiding something. Then I walked into his office and opened his email. There it was. Not just some flirtation, not just a one-time mistake like cheaters always like to call it. Full-blown affair. Trips, dinners, pictures. There was even one photo of them on what looked like a rooftop bar kissing, with the city skyline behind them. And in that moment, I snapped. He looked happier in that photo than I'd seen him look in a long time. That was the moment that the sadness in me died, and something much colder took its place. But I didn't lose it, no matter how much I wanted to. I didn't scream or confront him. I don't even remember crying. Instead, I closed the laptop and calmly looked up divorce lawyers the next day on my lunch break. I didn't want a messy exit. I wanted a calculated one. So I met with a lawyer in secret. He confirmed that with my income and the years we'd been married, I would absolutely be eligible for alimony. He asked if I had proof of the affair. I showed him the emails and the photos that I had already backed up to my private drive. He gave me a look that said, "You're not the first, and sadly, you won't be the last." Then he asked me if my husband had any major financial changes coming up. I said yes. He was due for a big raise within the next fiscal quarter. My lawyer smiled and told me waiting until the raise hit would mean a far higher calculation for alimony. That's when it clicked. Not only was I getting out, I was going to make him pay. Literally. So I played the part. I smiled, I cooked his meals, I kept up all appearances. He had no idea I was spending my lunch breaks gathering documents, printing financial records, and positioning myself to walk away with the house and a hefty monthly check. Meanwhile, he kept screwing his little work fling in hotel rooms and coming home to the wife who folded his laundry and kissed him goodnight. I could have thrown it in his face every time I passed him in the hall, but I bit my tongue, because anger gets you momentary satisfaction. Silence lets you win. Then the raise hit. His company emailed out the new salary brackets for the year, and I printed that email out with shaking hands. That weekend, I double-checked every file in my folder, and I smiled to myself knowing exactly how this was going to go down. This morning, I made him breakfast. Eggs just the way he likes them. Toast with a good jam. I even made him coffee and brought it to him in bed. He didn't deserve this, but that's not the point. I watched him sip the coffee, tell me that I was the best wife in the world, and something inside of me finally exhaled. When he looked at me and smiled, I kissed him once on the cheek and said, "I'll be filing for divorce this week. The paperwork will be sent to your office." I can't describe the look on his face. It was like someone had told him that the world was ending and that Santa Claus had died all at once. First confusion, then panic. He stood up and started yelling. asking what was wrong, calling me insane. Then came the tears. Why are you doing this? What's happening? I love you, don't do this. I didn't say a word. I walked upstairs, grabbed my bag that I had packed in advance, and left to stay at a hotel. Since then, he's left me 18 voicemails. Not a single one of them takes responsibility. It's all, what did I do? And how could you do this to us? No acknowledgement of the cheating. Certainly no apology. Now, here's the thing. I'm not mad anymore. I'm not even heartbroken. I just feel free. He'll be paying me alimony, and I'll be keeping the house. He'll have to watch as I move on, knowing full well that he threw away a loyal, committed wife, all for a fling that he didn't even bother to keep discreet. Update. Since the morning where this went down, a few wild things have happened. First, I've received some absolutely unhinged messages on here, all from men that I don't even know, telling me that I'm an evil woman for punishing him with alimony, that I'm destroying a man's life, that I should have just forgiven him. One guy even had the gall to say that it was my fault for not being interesting enough to keep my husband's attention. Newsflash, cheaters cheat. It's not about the partner, it's about entitlement. And if you think I'm the bad guy for holding him accountable, you're part of the problem. Secondly, my soon-to-be ex keeps trying to message my friends to get sympathy. Too bad most of them saw through his act years ago and are firmly on my side. A few of them even offered to testify if he tries to contest anything. Lastly, and maybe most delicious of all, I have it in writing that he's responsible for the majority of our marital debt. He used our joint credit to impress his mistress, so when the courts look at it, it's all on him. So, to anyone who needs to hear this, don't scream. Don't throw the dishes. Don't give him the satisfaction of knowing he hurt you. Play the long game. Collect your evidence, protect your peace, then walk away like the badass you are, while he drowns in the mess that he made. I'm not bitter. I'm not vengeful. I'm just done. And it feels like that's the most powerful position of all.